Welcome everybody to another shocking episode of Lockdown 23 in 1. That's right, today we're traveling down to Idaho to speak about an inmate that was beat to death by his cellmate right before he went home. Unfortunately, that's a reality for many people in prison. You just don't hear too much about it. That's why I'm here, to get a little more ears and eyes out on the scene. Not to mention, look, if you're heading down that path, you gotta be prepared. Some of these prisons guys is fighting for their life every day, not knowing if they're gonna make it out. So rethink your game plan, man. You know, prison is a treacherous place. Anyways, let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoy this type of content, all things lockup and crime related, then this is where you want to be. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell before you leave, and check out my playlist with many more videos for you to start watching today. Now, the inmate we're speaking about today is 45-year-old Milo Warnick. And before I get into the details on how this man lost his life right before going home, let's get a better idea of the prison he was in. Idaho State Correctional Center, or ISCC, is a state prison for men located in Ada County, Idaho, one of a cluster of 7 detention facilities known as the South Boise Prison Complex. The ISCC opened in July of 2000 as the first privately run prison in Idaho, with a capacity of just over 2,000 inmates. It's also the largest prison in the state, housing maximum, medium, and minimum custody male offenders. Now that we got a better idea of the prison that he was in, how did 45-year-old Milo Warnick end up there? We gotta take it all the way to the beginning. Milo ends up getting caught driving under the influence in August of 2021, and this is his second DUI within 15 years, so that makes it a felony. And many states are like that. Look, my uncle was deported back to Colombia behind DUIs. They don't play in some states. Now it says during the pandemic, Milo's court proceedings were delayed until 2023. That's quite a bit of time. You would think people that aren't going in the right direction would just continuously keep getting caught drinking or something else. It just shows that they're going down a dark path. But not with Milo. It says during the whole time waiting to go to court, Milo rode to work on a bike and stayed completely sober. Keep in mind he was arrested in 2021. So about 2 years went by of him riding on his bike, staying sober. If that ain't a sign to the judge that he has changed his ways, I don't know what is. But he showed up to work every day and showed up for urinalysis. His employer, an HVAC contractor in Meridian, vouched for Milo during his case. But the judge still decided to send Milo to prison for the next 2 years. And that's when everything got much worse. Once in prison, Milo was cheeking his medication. And what's cheeking? Alright, this is when, almost every day in a cell block, medical people will come by and hand out pills to the people that got little issues. Right? They get in line, they're ready with their cup of water, they take their medicine, and the nurse is supposed to say, okay, open up, lift up your tongue, to check and see if they cheek the pill, hiding it right in between their cheek and gum. That's a very common thing for inmates to do and take it back to the cell block and sell it to another inmate. But in this situation, Milo was cheeking because the medicine that they were giving him was keeping him up at night because they were giving it to him right before he went to bed. He needed it more along the lines of early morning.
Once in prison, Milo was given meds for anxiety and bipolar disorder in the evenings instead of the mornings, which kept him up at night. To change that, prison records show he submitted a paper form in a drop box and cheeked his medication in the meantime, storing it away.
It says he tried to request a change in his medication time, but he was never told that the prison was no longer using paper request forms, even though the prison still had the forms and boxes for them around the prison. So he thought what he was doing was protocol. But with no reply back and many sleepless nights, he decides to take things into his own hands. He ends up getting caught hiding his medication. And believe it or not, in jail or prison, that's a serious write-up. And it can land you on lockdown 23 in 1, possibly for a couple months. Because in the correctional officer's eyes, you're cheeking it to take it back and make a profit. Pretty much a drug dealer. Even if you were to tell him the truth, hey, yeah, I just put it in the cell and wait for morning time, it helps me better. They wouldn't believe him, man. He's still going straight to Himtown. That's how it works, man. You can't do no cheeking, period.
Milo got caught cheeking his meds, and because possessing drugs or alcohol in the prison is against the rules, correctional officers gave him a disciplinary offense and sent him to high-security close custody. There, he spent almost 23 hours a day with his cellmate. An Idaho public information officer explained close custody typically houses inmates who've escaped, have serious disciplinary history, or did something dangerous in prison.
But it says that Milo got caught cheeking, and that's considered breaking the rules. He was reclassified as a maximum level offender. And that's how these short timers end up in a cell with maniacs. There in cell block G, according to his family, he was placed in a cell with a man who had a history of violence and mental health issues. Milo had written to his family about these problems with his cellmate and efforts he was making to smooth things over with him. In this letter it says, "I have tried to help him," speaking about his cellmate, "but he cannot be helped." That letter was written 3 days before he was beat to death. And judging by those words, it's almost as though he knew exactly what was coming his way. It doesn't go into details on how he was beat to death, but he did have fractures all over his skull.
He had fractures all over his skull, in the front, in the back, all over. Milo had no defensive wounds on him.
No defensive wounds on him whatsoever. You know what that means to me? That this guy sat there and continuously stomped on him or whatever and fractured his skull over and over again while he was already knocked out. The prison still hasn't identified the individual that beat him to death. If I were to guess, it's probably because he has mental issues as well and should never have had anybody in the cell with him to begin with. But this story's a perfect example, alright? You ain't got to be out there stealing and hurting people. Could have just been drinking coming home from the bar. Next thing you know, you're in prison because you didn't know that the second offense within 15 years is a felony. Then one thing leads to another and you're stuck in G block with a killer right before you go home. But my condolences go out to the family and hopefully they get justice sooner than later. Really think about this story the next time you want to drink and drive. I'm not gonna lie, I had a DUI, man. I learned my lesson. That breathalyzer, man, broke me down. I wasn't really a drinker to begin with. I just got caught up in the mix. I never forget too, when I got pulled over, I pulled into a 7-Eleven. I was like, I'm good, until I hit the curb going in. I said, oh man, I'm going to prison. Now he knows for sure I'm wasted. And he did. I never forget it too. I started crying, then I started snapping. As soon as I found out they weren't giving me a warning. And that was my hardest bid. You know why? Because I had kids. The first time I went to prison, I didn't have no kids. I didn't have no obligations other than a few side janks, right? So, you know, that time around, it really broke me down. And I never went back again. Well, I went to jail, but I never went back to prison. One thing for sure and two things is for certain. I've learned my lesson, especially when it comes to DUIs. But that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to cover another story about an inmate in Idaho getting stomped to death, but we'll save that for another day. Believe it or not, it's very treacherous. It's about two friends that grew up together, ends up in prison together, and one of them ends up killing his lifelong friend. Stay tuned for that. Very treacherous. Also, ladies and gentlemen, you can go ahead and type in lockdown23and1.com right now and subscribe to my coming soon website. I'm in the works right now, not to mention rebranding everything. I know I'm sitting at over 800,000 subscribers, but I really haven't worked on my brand. Soon the sports hats will be gone and replaced with my 23-and-1 merchandise, as well as my shirts and other things. I gotta represent for the home team. And all this stuff is going to be on my website, not to mention some other exclusive things. So be on the lookout for all that. And the only way to do that is by hitting that notification bell, setting it to all. Until the next time, y'all be easy, be safe, and more importantly than anything, stay free.